According to them, careful considerations on declining inflation and its pressures. Governor Dr. Ernest Addison explained the upward adjustment of petroleum prices poses a risk to inflation outlook.
The year-on-year inflation for August was 12.3% from 11.9% in July. According to the central bank, this played a key role in maintaining the policy rate at 21%.
Since August 2017, there have been upward adjustments in ex-pump petroleum prices, which are likely to transmit through prices in the coming months and pose some risks to the inflation outlook. These notwithstanding, the latest forecasts show that the medium-term inflation target is achievable in 2018.
Total public debt stock stood at 139 billion cedis at the end of June, representing 68.6% of GDP, from 137 billion cedis, representing 68% of GDP in May 2017. This marginal increase has been attributed to the seesawing effect of the exchange rate.
Exchange rate stability is very key, and even though the policy objective for the bank is on price stability, we expect that once we are able to achieve that price stability, would also indirectly, in a sense, deliver the exchange rate stability. So we are not really focusing on a fixed exchange rate. Ghana does not have a fixed exchange rate.
On growth, prospects remain positive for the economy. Reacting to the announcement, banking consultant Nana Otue-Champong is of the view interest rates are likely to go down.
Gradually, the cost of lending is coming down, and I think some players in the market will confirm that the cost of borrowing is gradually coming down. So this will mean that the banks will continue the downward trend to lower interest rates.
All right, so that's the Bank of Ghana announcing there. And a lot of analysts anticipated that this was going to happen. Gentlemen, let me start off with you, Ben. This was what you also predicted ahead of today?
Admittedly, no. This was what we were expecting. And we were expecting a further easing to the monetary policy. And that was because we felt at the point that inflation, or the risk to inflation, had been largely tamed.
Okay.
Growth, as I'm sure you'd have noticed in the Bank of Ghana's press release, is still an issue.
Sure.
There's still an output gap, which means that we're not growing as fast as we should be growing, or we would like to be growing. And so we felt that the facts were skewed in favor of growth rather than for inflation, which would then ask for a monetary policy cut instead of them maintaining at 21%. But then I believe that their action also makes sense. They have mentioned the fact that fuel tariffs have gone up slightly since August, which we all know feeds into inflation. And if that is anything to go by, it means that in the months ahead, we might not see the downtrend in inflation that we've seen from the beginning of the year. And so that risk is also a very serious risk that has to be taken care of. And so I believe that in as much as we even expected the cut, it's still fairly reasonable that they held it at 21%.
Fairly reasonable. Justice?
Yeah, one thing I've come to realize is that for most monetary policy committee meetings, the members on the board tend to be very conservative. And if you look at the mandate of the MPC, the first is really price stability. So at the least threat of inflationary risk, they tend to react almost instantaneously. So even though, as Ben said, we were expecting them to focus more on growth, it's like their natural inclination to hedging against the inflation risk actually is what manifested in the 21% being maintained at this policy meeting.
I look at, for example, the Bank of Ghana's release talking about prices of Ghana's key export commodities having recovered somewhat, driven by some market dynamics, as Mariah be aware. How, to a larger extent, did this really influence the decision to maintain the policy rate at 21%?
It did. You see, one of the benefits of the recovery in the prices of our key commodity exports, and in this case, really what they are talking about over there is gold.
Absolutely, because gold picked up on the back of the weak dollar.
Of the weak US dollar, and because of ongoing political tensions, US, North Korea, there was concerns about elections in Europe, especially France and Germany and all of that. So that is really where the benefits to the commodity prices is coming from. And it benefited us to the point where it helped the Bank of Ghana accumulate significant reserves, which then puts us in a position to fight if the cedi is depreciating. You know, they hold these reserves so that they can play in the market, basically hold the cedi stable. And so the issue there is that if you don't expect any further increases, especially in light of the fact that we are expecting interest rates in the US to go up, which might then affect gold prices, then it makes sense that you adopt a very cautious stance. Because if interest rates start going up and gold prices start going down, cocoa is already down. If oil, the outlook for oil is really not very good. Because irrespective of what OPEC is doing, it looks like the US and Canada are still bent on pumping out more oil. If you look at it from that perspective, then it really makes sense to adopt a wait-and-see attitude, at least until the Fed meeting in October, as to whether they're going to actually increase interest rates in the US or not, before we can take any more action on monetary policy easing. So yes, those factors influence the decision quite significantly.
The point you made earlier on about the growth pattern not being very encouraging, to the extent that the Bank of Ghana found it prudent to defray that particular risk and still maintain, because you are anticipating an increase, because we're having a decrease there, because I mean the growth figures are not very encouraging, at least from the outlook that we see. But when you look at the global growth momentum, it's been strengthened further. I mean, if you look at the period previous till now, I mean, it's been tilting from the US and the UK right to Japan, and you know, and those other Asian,
especially Europe.
Absolutely. And so, how do these dynamics play into this particular argument that you make?
So naturally, because we are all entwined within the global economy, it would make sense that we would rejoice if the economies of Europe and in Asia and even in the US is growing. But the problem here is that most of us have benefited because these countries have had very loose monetary policy. In Europe, for instance, at a point, their policy rate was below 0%. Now, when that happens, all the money moves to our part of the world, which means we get significant capital inflows. Our central banks are able to develop a lot of reserves. The risk now is that because these countries are now experiencing growth, their central banks, which in which case I'm talking of the European Central Bank and the US Federal Reserve, might start thinking of increasing policy rates in those places. When they start doing that, they're going to shift monies, or what we call portfolio inflows, out of Africa or other emerging markets back into Europe and the US. That puts us at risk. Because the moment they start moving monies out, it places our currencies under pressure. There's a risk to inflation from that. And if our central banks don't have the, should I say, reserve strength to fight currency depreciation, then of course we all know what's going to happen to our economy, as it did in 2013 and 2014. And so that is why that is so risky for us. It's good for the global economy that those economies are seeing a rebound. But if they are really successful at that, and we all believe they will be, early next year there's going to be monetary policy tightening in all those countries, which is kind of bad for us.
And that outlook you give is quite worrying. I mean, all other things being equal, should it go according to what you have predicted? And Justice, this brings me to the point where if you listen to Dr. Addison, he makes the point that the decision to maintain the policy rate was influenced by threats to economic growth and stability. I juxtapose that to what Ben said earlier on. How long can we continue defraying the possibility of not growing and still maintaining the policy rate, or further decreasing it?
So, as Ben mentioned, we are in a very intertwined economy. The global economy is interlinked. So, we realize that what normally feeds into the monetary policy, she starts from an analysis of the global economy. And the governor noted correctly that the global economy is mildly rebounding, and monetary policy in Europe and US is very accommodating. And if you listen to what the US Federal Reserve mentioned last week, that starting in October, they'll start unwinding their huge balance sheet assets. It means that, I mean, in the very near term, you will expect interest rates to rise in the US. And if that happens, you will know that obviously there will be some form of capital flight from emerging markets to this advanced economy, because then it will be more lucrative to invest in, let's say, your bonds and your other treasury securities. So that will automatically pose a threat to Ghana. If you realize this year, our balance of payments have been in surplus. And the main thing has been because our capital account has done very well. And our capital accounts have done very well because when we issue bonds, even though we are accumulating debt, we are still getting foreign inflows. And it tends to strengthen our reserve base. So even if your city is not doing well, because you have a strong reserve, you can fight that. But now if the reverse is about to happen, that should pose a threat to you. So even though we expect that growth should be high on the agenda, as I mentioned, you understand why they are being cautious, because already we've seen inflation increase in the month of August. And if there's the slightest threat of currency depreciation, which can lead to higher non-food inflation rate, it's likely your inflation outlook will all of a sudden begin to look bad. So even though we, as I said, expect inflation to, we expect growth to be the main driver, the Monetary Policy Committee have decided to take a very cautious approach. At least let's see the next couple of months through, and getting to the end of the year, we'll see if we can adjust things downwards.
And that's where, you know, for us, I mean, I'm reflecting the views of the business community, essentially the private sector, who would expect that when this policy rate goes down, it's good news for them, because I mean, directly you must expect that commercial banks will respond by reducing interest rates on, and also ensure that we have cheap capital in the system. But that hasn't been seen over the period. The reduction in the policy rate has not translated into a corresponding reduction in interest rates from commercial banks for the private sector, which was one of the reasons why government intended to embark on some of these measures to ensure that the three major influences of interest rates reduce, which has been reducing over the period, but we don't see that happening.
See, and I think we explained this at length the last time. I think the key thing people would have to understand is interest rates are like prices. We all know how prices rise very quickly when cost of those people who are producing the goods for us begin to go up. But we all know that when those costs decline, the people are those same suppliers are very reluctant to let prices fall in line with that. Prices are like interest rates. Interest rates are like prices. We call them sticky down. We say it in economics, sticky downwards. It will go up very quickly, but when it's coming down, it takes like forever. And so you would expect that to happen. In addition to that is the fact that most of these banks have taken deposits from clients locked in over the long term, say 6 months, 1 year, at higher rates, say 20%. I can't give you a loan or be giving loans at 18% when my cost of funding is 20%. That would mean I'm making a loss. I would have to wait for those maturities to come about, and then when I'm refinancing them or I'm taking new deposits at a lower rate, I can offer them to my clients, to consumers and to businesses at lower rates. So that is another reason why interest rates have also remained fairly, high, even though the policy rate is on a decline. But the truth is also that there has actually been a decline. I think in the Bank of Ghana's latest figures, for the month of July or in August,
actually in the
average
month of
lending
August,
rate is in 29.8%. That's the first time it has fallen below 30% in a long time. So at least it is a marginal decline.
Plus or minus 2.
I know, but it's a marginal decline.
That
is always what you should expect. The monetary policy cycle is such that in Ghana, let's be honest, the transmission is not very effective.
True.
Exactly. But in the long run, or the long run is too long, sorry, in the medium term, we would expect that to take effect. And I would say give and take 18 months to 2 years. That's fairly reasonable. And we started seeing this policy easing cycle from November last year. So I am confident that during the first quarter of 2018, we should actually see, should I say, more reasonable lending rates for consumers and for businesses as well.
I ask this question because I know Tue Champon make the point that the maintenance of the policy rate at 21%, he's expecting interest rates to go down. I mean, let's bring his view into the discussion. Is it a realistic expectation considering the variables involved and then also what you have anticipated?
The variables involved is one of the problems with the monetary policy transmission. Okay, I don't know how to say this, but the models the banks use don't depend entirely on the policy rate. So you can see the policy rate drop to very significant lows, and you can still see lending rates. I mean, it's still false, but it's still a similar dichotomy.
Indeed, raise concerns about the kind of business model a lot of the banks run in this country.
It's not a business model per se. You see, it is a model that is somewhat determined by the central bank itself. And so if if the transmission is not working very well, you can't really blame the commercial banks. What's the regulator doing about it, or what have they done about this in the past? And so yes, it is true. The rates have not fallen as quickly as the policy rate has. But honestly, I believe that in the long run, in the medium term, I keep saying in the long run, in the medium term, we should see that significant decline to more reasonable levels. Yeah.
Well, I'm going to come to you, Justice, but let me go onto the telephone lines now. Courage Mate is also an analyst with Data Bank. Courage, good evening to you. Thank you for joining us. Great. 21% as maintained by the Monetary Policy Committee, something you anticipated?
Well, I wasn't totally surprised. I expected some marginal cuts, not because there are no upside risks to inflation, but I felt that the broad positive outlook outweighed the upside risk to inflation, and so it was necessary for the MPC to send that positive signal sustainably to the market, albeit marginally, because upside risk to inflation has mounted. So generally, on the back of this upside risk, I wasn't totally surprised.
I see. But then looking at the fact that we haven't recorded very encouraging growth figures, how long do you think that we can maintain or reduce the policy rate to the extent that we are not having corresponding increases in our growth?
I'm not sure I heard it clearly, but if you are referring to the low growth rate in terms of GDP
Absolutely.
growth rate, yeah, I think that the core mandate of the central bank is price stability. And they have shown in the past that they stand ready to restore and sustain price stability, even if it means increasing the sacrifice ratio. And sacrifice ratio, I mean the difference between the potential growth momentum and what we are currently doing. Currently, we are doing significantly below our potential in terms of growth rate. But the central bank has just emphasized its core mandate of price stability. And I'm sure for as long as risks to inflation remain high, they will continue to, stay tight or cautious on policy rates. I think that the key consideration in this particular instance is core inflation. If you look at what happened to core inflation, it moved up sharply above 13%,
right,
even
true.
though headline inflation was around 12.3%. Now, the implication of this is that underlying inflationary pressures are still high, so that even after taking out the volatile component of energy, it's still above 13%. Now, if energy prices continue to pass through, and they pass through to headline inflation, we could see a sharper increase in headline inflation. On that basis, they felt that we need to remain cautious and tight as we are. So unless the underlying pressures decline sustained and sharply, it will be difficult to see that sharp cut in the policy rate.
Now, to the extent that this monetary policy rate influences the cost of credit, some have anticipated that it's going to lead, the maintenance of the policy rate would lead to interest rates likely going down in the months ahead of us before the next MPC meeting. Is this something that you also would wade into and predict same?
Well, I don't expect any sharp increase in decrease in lending rates. The reason being that even though lending rate has inched down so far this year, based on the data that was published, I think that the general pace of decline is being restricted by the high NPLs ratio that we have in the banking sector, currently above 20%. What it means is that there is a high risk to every loan that you give out, because averagely 20% of it may not be recovered. Emphasis on this. Now, with that particular risk, it's very difficult to see a situation where a bank will be very bullish or optimistic and reduce its lending rate. Let's also remember that interest rate is a signal of the risk. And the higher the risk premium you want to charge, and the lending rate will remain high. So if the risk to the loan portfolio does not decline, it's difficult to see a decline in lending rate sharply, even if the policy rate declines.
So for you, so long as the non-performing loans remains high, whatever the case might be, it will still be a major determinant as to whether banks are going to reduce their interest rates or not.
Absolutely, because the policy rate affects the base rate, but the NPLs affect the risk premium, and the lending rate is the base rate plus the risk premium.
I see. Now, I want to do this very finally before you go. Already, the Bank of Ghana is saying it has received notices of mergers from between 10 to 15 smaller banks who are already in discussions following the increase in something that you predicted was going to happen, but so soon?
Yeah, again, it's not surprising because you have between now and end of next year, and roughly we are talking about 15 months to raise 400 million Ghana cedis. That's quite huge for some of these local banks. And if you look at what has happened to the capital adequacy ratio, it moved downwards to about 14% from about 16%. It shows you that some of these local banks with very fragile or weak capital base are the ones pulling down the assets and their capital adequacy ratio. And so it tells you that they are going to face challenges if they are to raise the capital on their own accord. So the only way forward is to consolidate, and that is what they are seeking to do quickly before the deadline, because it requires a lot of considerations. You need to go to board, you need to discuss with shareholders, and you need to consider the investors that are coming in, the rate of return they expect as well. So a lot of this discussion will take some time before the deadline.
And do you expect a lot more? I mean, we have talking about between 10 and 15, and we have almost, 33 commercial banks now?
Well, I think the big banks, particularly the ones with the external holdings, are likely to do that easily. And we've seen even one or two local banks showing some financial muscle, particularly with GCB. We know who can easily do that from their retained earnings added to their stated capital. But beyond these big banks, the local banks are the ones I expect to be considering measures.
Okay. Courage, I'd want to thank you very much for your initial thoughts on this. Grateful.
Pleasure.
Courage Mate is a research analyst with Data Bank as well. I'll come back in studio. Now, he makes the point, Justice, about the non-performing loans, a little over 20%, being one of the major determinants that the banks are going to look at if they ever decide to reduce interest rates.
Yes, I just want to add to the discussion.
Sure.
And one thing we should guard against is that anytime there is, let's say, policy rate being maintained or declined, we shouldn't immediately expect to see it reflect in interest rate for banks. Because the main thing is that the policy rate is supposed to give guidance as to how the monetary policy environment is supposed to be like. So if you listen to what the governor says and you take certain cues from that, as a business person, you can plan for the medium term as to the direction you expect the economy to go. But it will be a bit erroneous to almost instantaneously expect to see a decline in interest rates. And that's why we've seen this cycle start sometime in November. And you can tell that the difference in terms of lending has been very marginal.
Sure.
And so if all other things being equal, the easing process continues, then you should see further marginal decrease. So it takes place over a period of time. It's not instantaneous. And to the NPL issue, it's true. I agree with what Courage mentioned. The NPL issue has been an issue for some time. And for your typical bank, when they are charging lending rates, they will look at policy rate, of course, and they will look at the risk premium. So to solve this, we just have to look at what other policies can we use aside from the monetary policy to bring down lending rates. Monetary policy is very straightforward. They have a mandate per the Banking Act, price stability good, and they can't move outside their mandate. Sure. So if you want to find a sustainable way of bringing lending rates, you need to find some allied ways or some allied measures you can use to reduce the rates. So as he said, so far as our NPLs are high, the banks are also in for business. They don't want to expose themselves too much. They also make sure they charge rates that will make sure that if I adjust for the risk I'm exposing myself to, I should still make some reasonable spread. So I think we should be looking at other measures. And in this light, if you realize that in the budget this year some issues came up. One has to do with the national identification system. Yeah. And this is something we've been closely monitoring, and we feel it will help even reduce NPLs, because if you have an easy way of identifying anybody, if you've taken a loan with Bank A and you've not paid and we know you are a risky person, when you move to Bank B, all your details will be made available, and I will know the kind of person I'm dealing with, and I can properly charge the right rate, so that instead of having a flat risk premium that applies to everybody on a case-by-case basis, depending on your risk exposure or your riskiness as a customer, the banks can be able to appropriately set rates. And this moves beyond the scope of monetary policy rates. And you are talking about other policies or other measures that can collectively help reduce the lending rate.
Good one, then. I still have your business focus. I mentioned earlier on that the Bank of Ghana has received notices of mergers from between 10 and 15 smaller banks, I mean, as we would want to put it for lack of better expression, who are already in discussions following the increase in the minimum capital requirement for commercial banks. Well, according to the central bank governor, Dr. Asiedu-Dartey, he made this known, explaining that the development is strictly market-driven. Let's go listen.
The Bank of Ghana listed 9 undercapitalized banks, of which 2, UT and Capital Banks, were insolvent. The rest had up to September 20 to submit their capital plans.
As of the September 20th, all of them had, performance that I would say satisfactory. We are quite satisfied with the outcomes that we saw at the end of September. And right now we are trying to focus more on the new minimum capital that we have set. We have given that indication that we will enforce it. We will ensure that banks that are in operation by the end of December 2018 have met the minimum capital requirement.
With some banks ready to shore up the 400 million cedi minimum capital requirement, some smaller banks have no choice but to merge.
10 or 15 banks, belong to that part of the graph. We expect that there will be consolidation in that sense. And how that consolidation takes place, we want it to be market-driven. Let the market come and decide on how they want to take meeting the levels of minimum capital that we are asking for.
Well, this was largely anticipated that it was actually going to happen, but the number is what has raised a lot more questions as whether we should be expecting a lot more. Ben, before I come to you, as a matter of fact, we told the head of banking supervision of the Bank of Ghana, Raymond Amanfo, explained exactly what they meant by what we mean by mergers and what's happening currently, which they say it is market-driven. Let's take a listen to him.
Now, when you are talking about a merger, then you are talking about virtually banks that are of similar strength, right? So you can have these banks meeting across the table and discussing. You can also have bigger banks that want to maybe acquire or also have some arrangement with some smaller banks, a group of smaller banks. So these are what we have received is intentions, and they are not actually finalized proposals for merger. Because you first have to start talking. You first have to give an indication to the regulator that this is what I intend doing, and these are the people I'm talking to, right? And I think at this stage, it is too early for us to go public and start talking about who and who are talking, because these are initial preliminary discussions.
Okay, so that's the head of banking supervision in the Bank of Ghana, Raymond Amanfo, there speaking. So explains exactly what it is. These are intentions expressed between 10 and 15, but
I would have been surprised if 10 or 15 deals were already in progress. It makes sense that they're actually intentions. But then that's also because of the very tight deadline. As I think Mr. Martin mentioned when you were speaking to him, it's only up to December 2018.
Exactly.
And you should have completed by then. You should have submitted plans by then. You should have completed by then. Now, the risk is if you don't take action very quickly, there are limited funds in the market, and you might lose out on an opportunity because every other person or all the other funds have been taken up. We know there are some private equity funds that are looking to invest in Ghana, and for instance, people like that might offer an opportunity to acquire some of the banks. If you don't move in very quickly and get one of these people, you'll be left hanging out to dry. Again, for those who are already listed, there's always the opportunity to go in for a rights issue per se. The risk also is that how many companies or how many banks on the stock exchange can do a rights issue within that very short period. It's the same investors that will be buying into each and every one of those. So again, there are limited funds. So it makes sense that all these people are having discussions, because if you don't move quickly, you might find yourself wanting by the end of, say, April, May 2018. And I believe that it's in the right direction. I also believe that it's also because of what we saw last 2 months with UT and Capital Bank. I think we are seeing an invigorated central bank that has proven that it is willing to enforce its own regulations. And there's a little, should I say, fear among the banks that you'll be caught on the wrong side going forward. And I think that's good, basically, yeah.
That's good, you say. I'll come to you as well, Justice, on this. We already have now 31, 2 yet to start. So let's say all other things being equal, 33 by the end of the year. 15 already, let's say, expressing the intention to merge. Let's assume that it all goes through before the deadline. So it means we are left with what? An additional, say, another 15 or 18 to go with. Your thoughts on this?
I don't think it's really about the number. You can tell the...
Well, there was a question about 33 banks, commercial banks.
No, it's not about the number in the sense that if you look at what the Bank of Ghana is trying to achieve, they are trying to ensure that the banking system is very sound.
Sure.
And to ensure that the banks are properly capitalized, they have geographical representation. So if you have 31 banks and they are not as strong enough, and you have, let's say, 15 or 20, and they can ensure that you have a very strong banking system, I mean, I think that's what we should be looking at. So it's not the numbers in having a lot of banks or having fewer banks. It's about having good quality banks who can perform their mandate and ensure that you have a strong banking system to work with. And so I think, and one thing I forgot to mention is they're also looking at risk. You see, most of the banks, or some of the banks, are on the borderline when it comes to capital adequacy ratio. And so if they are able to consolidate and merge, and you have, let's say, half of the number of banks you have now, but they are strong, heavily capitalized, they can take on big ticket transactions, they can serve the needs of the general public, I mean, I think we'll all be happy in the end. So you can tell what the Bank of Ghana is trying to achieve. It's not as if they just decided one day to increase the minimum capital requirements. They want to achieve something. They want to ensure that we have a very sound banking system, and they want to ensure that the risk that the ordinary depositor will be exposed to when you invest in a weak bank would be eliminated. So I think if the number reduces from 31 or 33 to, let's say, 15 or even 10, and we can ensure that this aim is achieved, I mean, it's all for the better.
It's all for the better. That is what you are presenting going forward.
And it is.
And clearly, I mean, if you're talking about a strengthening banking sector, it obviously complements the kind of economic outlook that the Bank of Ghana is, or the government, as a matter of fact, is talking about. But you see, when you look at the argument that was also raised by others, that why do you want to put a blanket, minimum capital requirement for all banks, when there are banks that are focused on particular area, SME banking, I mean, commercial banking, merchant banking, and all the others. So why would you want to put all of them on the same scale?
You see, and that is why within the banking industry, we have tier 1, tier 2, we even have tier 3. There's a section of tier 3, and then there's another section.
So you mean if you can't make it, they should go and take savings and loans?
Which is why it is very strange that you would find savings and loans company making the 15 million mark and then quickly ramping up their capital within some 18 months, 2 years to get 120 million. If you really want to play within the SME space, you can become a big savings and loans company, and there's nothing wrong with that. You could have $100 million cedis in capital and still be a savings and loans company. There's nothing that precludes you from doing that. Unfortunately, it appears that whenever anybody becomes a big savings and loans company, they feel like they have to graduate into tier 1 banking,
universal
banking, and that is a problem that we have.
Yeah.
And so that is really not a point, really. If you want to play within the SME space, there's a reason why those tiers are graduated the way they are. Remain where you should remain.
Remain where you should remain. If you can't make it, just come down and operate within your own circles. So I'm going to go for this quick break. When I come back, go for a mover of the week. Then we're getting to the stock market. To stay.
Established in 1948, University of Ghana is the nation's premier university. With our fast pace of expansion, there was a need for us to get a better internet connectivity. So we chose Vodafone Business Solutions. With Vodafone Business Solutions, we were able to connect our offsites and campuses and regional centers and manage them efficiently as a single unit. The 21st Century Innovation Vodafone offers us enhances our digital learning platform championed by the College of Education throughout the country. Such a huge paradigm shift was made possible through the use of Vodafone's business solutions. Therefore, we at the University of Ghana are delighted to be called Ready Business.
Vodafone, power to you.
The Gillette Blue 2 has a water-activated Lubristrip, giving you a clean shave with fewer nicks and cuts. Upgrade to Gillette Blue 2. Gillette, the best a man can get.
Hello, good evening. So you're still watching Business Focus, and it's time for the Mover segment. Tonight, we have a young lady who decided to leave banking where the real deal is, where all the money is, to be an entrepreneur. I'm talking about Nana Ohima Enchidakwa, who is CEO of Celio Naturel. Nana, good evening to you, and you're welcome to Business Focus, and congratulations. We celebrate you as our mover.
Thank you.
I'm sure one will be wondering, why leaving all the money behind at the bank to be an entrepreneur? Why? Tell us.
It's about following your passion and what you love. I love natural stuff, skincare, looking beautiful, and healthy lifestyle. So I just thought, I started doing it at home as a hobby, and I was giving it out to friends. So I just thought, well, why not turn it into a business? And this is me. I could sleep, wake up, and I'm dreaming about what to do next. So that's how come I left the banking. I like to see people look beautiful. And working in a bank, people always have to look presentable. But then I noticed that they're not happy there. They're stressed and all of that. And I thought, I have products, I have stuff that could make you de-stress. So why am I sitting here? I could do things that will serve them and we'll all be happy. So you're getting things that will make you beautiful and you'll be de-stressed. And that's it, like, you know.
Now, let's look at how it all started, talking about initial capital. How much did Nana start with?
I started with 500 CDs, 500 Ghana CDs. I did like a pilot, so I got some of the ingredients, I got some containers, and then I did some, sold at a few fairs. Initially, I was giving it to friends as presents. And then I thought, no, I can't be doing this. I have to make money out of it. So I did like a pilot. I went to a few fairs and sold, and people were buying. The second fair, I think halfway through the fair, my products were all gone. I was like, oh, it's going to sell. Then I put more money into it. So I put more capital. Then I registered the business. I was like, oh, time to move. So
and what has been your motivation so far? Well, I'm sure viewers can see some of the products here, and Nana would soon start packaging. She's already doing that. So tell us, whilst you're doing that, what really motivates you to do what you do now?
It's seeing the transformation of my customers. Like when they come back, sometimes people like their face, and I get scared even, like when they show me their face, I'm like, oh, I just did a beauty product. I didn't do like a medicine. But when they come back and I see the transformation and the glow and they got their confidence back, it just excites me. I'm like, wow, this is it. And sometimes I tell them, give me. You pay too low for that, but that's what keeps me moving, because I see how they transform, they're more relaxed, you know. And stress is one thing that it breaks homes. People come home, they're not happy and they're stressed. They bring in the stress on the job into the house, and it's showing on their face. They're aging quicker. It's not. You don't need that. You have to be relaxed.
No, I'm sure you know when it comes to skin and beauty stuff, most people are really particular when it comes to verification, how certified it is. Take us through the process. How has the journey been on that part?
Well, yeah, I had to. When I started, I went to Standard Board to have it tested. Right. So you have to have it tested. If it's for you as well, then Food and Drug still has to check. Then they'll give you a certification. So I've gone through all the processes, and I'm not changing any formula. I'm still using the same formula that they use to test.
And talking about formula, how different is your products from other products? There are a lot of products, face products, skin products on the market now. What makes the difference?
Mine are made in Ghana. Everything is sourced from Ghana. It's all natural and organic, and it's our own ancient stuff. It's things that our ancestors used to use that we're going back to. So that's
Things
what
like,
makes...
Can you give us names?
Well, because I have salt, bath salts, and it's not like Epsom salt that people are doing bath salts, but they're just going to buy Epsom salt and they're just packaging and selling. But this is like our old local and things. Like I've added my other ingredients to it. This has got chocolate in it. I've added a bit of natural cocoa, yeah. And cocoa is very good for the skin, you know. So I've added that, and I've packaged them. I'm doing everything. Because if you look at and brought back to Ghana and being sold at a higher price, so I'm giving you something that's right from here. It's original. I didn't sit on the plane to go, so the lifespan is
made in Ghana.
It's made in Ghana, right here, strictly made in Ghana.
And let's look at the market share. Who really are your target audience?
Right, we're looking at people between the ages of 18 to 40. Mainly, I targeted
men, women,
or
just
women. But then my main target market are women. Women between the ages of 18 to 40. I have complementary products.
The men are going to charge you for that.
The men are in here too. They should just wait. I'm unraveling myself. They should be patient. Right, the men will get the bath salts. I get the men using the clay max as well.
Okay.
Yes. But then I made the salt for them because they're wearing shoes all the time and their feet. So, like, when the shoes for a long time, sometimes you get smelly feet and all of that. So you soak your feet in the warm salt water, and it's fantastic. It's great for you.
Wow, so if you just joined us, this is the Mover segment, and we are having a beautiful discussion with Nana Ohima Dakwa, who is CEO of Celio, doing strictly made in Ghana skin products. And well, Nana, so let me find out from you, really, how is a mixture like? What informs your decision when you're mixing your products for the customer?
Right, I say that if you can't put it inside your mouth, it shouldn't go on your body. That's my principle. So when I'm doing products, I make sure, is it safe for the body? Like, is it edible? Then I use it for my combination, for my formulas. So the clay mask, all the ingredients are in. If you take them separately, you can eat it. So that's how it does. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, you could eat, if you take them separately, you could eat it, and it won't harm you.
Okay.
So then you can apply. That's how safe they are.
But I won't try to eat clay, trust me. Okay, let's look at your production and level of distribution. First, the production. How was it like for you?
On an average, when it's not so busy, I do about 150 a month. But then when it's busy, I do around 250. Yeah, 250 pieces of the clay mass, and then about 50 to 100 of the salt, the bath salts, yes.
And your distribution?
And distribution, I have a few shops that retail them, and then I sell online on social media.
What has been your greatest achievement so far since you left off at the bank to pursue this dream?
Right, initially I started off with that, like just this, I was doing just a few. And now I could do like, I think I was doing about 10 in a month to sell.
And you had people to
And I
buy.
had people, yeah, to buy. Well, when I started off, I had to give a lot for free to convince them. But then they came back and they came to buy more. So that's like, but now I could do like more. You know, on an average, I'm doing like 100, 150. And it's a big jump.
And how are you working? Using machine?
It's all handmade, manual, manpower. We do manpower, yes.
How tough has it been for you doing this business?
It's it's a new line of trying to focus on face care. It's really tough because getting people to really understand the whole concept. They're used to the big names. But then I'm trying to tell them that you need the natural and organic stuff. That's good for your skin and good. It's healthier. So that's been my main challenge, trying to convince the customers to use it. But the good thing is, once they use it, they come back and refer to other friends.
How has it been for you when it comes to support?
Being an entrepreneur is a lonely road. You have to believe in your dream and believe in what you're doing. because it'll get to a point nobody will believe in what you're doing. You probably will get one person who'll support you, but you have to be your own cheerleader, your own motivator, everything. So it's a passion that keeps me going. And I have a few friends who support me a lot. See, I have people who talk to me and they started with nothing and they have big businesses now. And they normally will tell me, when you start, it's tough, but you have to keep focused.
Talking about big business, Nana's expansion 5 years from now, what are we looking at?
Well, we're looking at a factory where we're producing made in Ghana. You know, we're doing our own stuff of clay mask. This is not like just shea butter, and it's like something different. And so I'm focusing on the face care. So it's just like things for your face, you know, your skin. And in the next few years, I'm seeing myself with a big factory. I'm exporting to the neighboring countries, and even like to America, Europe, and all of that.
Right. Yeah. And talking about having a factory, you started with 500 cities.
Yeah.
How much do you need for that
dream factory?
Yeah.
Well, we're looking at about maybe 200,000 Ghana cedis.
200,000.
Yeah.
And are you open for investors to come in? How much are you requesting from them actually?
Angel, I'm here. Well, it depends on the terms. I'll speak to my advisors, but yeah, if it's a good, I'm ready for it.
So moving from banking to entrepreneurship, I'm comparing the number of years. How long have you been at the bank and how long have you been in business?
Well, working in banking, I probably would say about 15 years.
15?
Yeah.
And business?
Business 2 years. I started off part-time whilst I was still at the bank. So I was doing it on a part-time basis.
I'm sure someone will be saying you're crazy to leave 15 years of hard labor.
It's about your dreams.
For 2 years.
It's about your dreams. You know, like I keep saying, young people, sometimes people will say, go and be a doctor. But it's following your child's passion. What's she good at? Is she good at art? Let her nurture that side. Don't let her go and become a doctor and kill patients.
Now let's look at the workforce. How many people do you have? How many people have you employed?
I have 2 people now working with me, yes.
I'm sure because of the level of production.
Yeah, level of production and trying to cut down on costs as well.
I want you to look into that camera and within some few seconds, what would you want to tell them?
Oh, young people, learn everything that is learnable. Don't sit down and say, well, I want to do this. Anything you could do for free, do it for free. I started my business and I've got things that I'm doing now because of stuff I did on the free along the way. I help people along the way and it's helped me with my business. So don't sit down and say, I want to work in an office, so that's it. If it's a cake seller by your side, you need to help her with something, help her. You might learn something from it.
Just before we go, the name. Why did you decide to settle on this name?
Well, Elior actually is a Jewish name. So I got the Elior name, and then Selior is my own word. It's Elior, as in French, because you say ça c'est bon, ça c'est so say. So I made it. It's Elior, and naturel is natural.
And what does Selior mean?
God is my light. So it's God is my light.
God is my light, natural.
Yeah.
Okay. So that explains it.
Leo.
Right, Nana Ohima Dakwa, CEO of Selior Naturel. We're grateful, and once again we celebrate you as our startup business. We're wishing you well in your endeavors. Well, we'll do for the Mover segment this evening. We have more on Business Focus after this. Stay with us.
Timuni, Liptilago watches or you piscinae. Nesanga dara, Nanda bone sheba, Nevertime bonaba, network shellanda malbone mama, Rabum the mammy, and something journey, Vodafone Business Solution. Red Business Package Mazo, the Chameka Minin to Mama Zak at the bonnet tab free. Then so Vodafone Business Solution, Chameka Ready Business.
Join Vodafone Business Solutions, activate the Red Business Package, and enjoy free calls among your colleagues, bonuses on all top-ups, and more. Visit any Vodafone shop to sign up now.
Vodafone, power to you.
Welcome back. Thank you, Nanekia. There were the mover of the week. I still have Justice Asiedu and Ben Amwa. They are analysts for First Bank. I don't know whether they intend to quit their many years of analysis at First Bank for entrepreneurs. You heard the lady, 15 years. I mean, it's good to be your own boss.
I know. It's certainly very appealing. But we would like to think of the fact that maybe not everybody is meant for that space. You would need to know exactly where you fit in and then remain there.
Great point. Now let's find out how the currency, specifically the cedi against the major trading currencies, it looks at the moment.
As usual, as we've seen throughout the course of the day, the cedi has held its own against the dollar. It's still below 5% depreciation, which is extraordinary, even compared to last year. And so the cedi has really held its own. But I think we've lost some ground against the euro, largely due to the fact that, as you already mentioned, growth in the eurozone is picking up, and as a result, the euro itself is strengthening. It's not really a point of us losing against the euro, but it's rather the euro strengthening against the Ghana cedi. But fairly enough, the cedi has continued to remain stable, and we hope that it will continue that until at least the end of the year, so that inflation pressures can remain subdued.
Let's do, fundamental analysis. How does the growth pattern on the global stage, tilting towards Japan and the euro market, benefit us? Because you see a lot of the pricing.
Well, the only benefit to us is if it happens to our export markets. True. So, for instance, if we export a lot of our cocoa and our fruits, as we do, to Europe per se, the point then is that rising demand, say, for cocoa in Europe will help to drive a pickup in cocoa prices, will help them to demand more of our cocoa, which then allows us to enjoy more export proceeds. But then, as I also mentioned earlier, growth in those countries also puts us at risk, because rising interest rates in those countries will draw out capital flows from Ghana to those economies. So there's a trade-off. I think what we have to do is to ensure that the central bank is pleased to defend the cedi in case there are outflows from our economy.
Good. Let's go into the stock market now. See how the stocks.
The stock market sort of experienced a dip last week, and it's mainly because of sell-off in mostly financial service stocks. So you have stocks like Standard Chartered, GCB, having people sell off. For Standard Chartered, even as of today, you can tell that the selling pressure is still high. And so because there's selling pressure, it's caused the market to trend downwards. There are other stocks, on the other hand, who have been recording significant gains. But because they are not large cap stocks, you don't see their influence being overbearing on the index. So generally this year, the equity market has been very good. But for the past 3 weeks, we've seen the index dip marginally, mainly due to the financial service stocks that have been reducing in price due to the sell-off we've experienced.
That's it. And going forward?
Going forward, at least for this week, we expect that trend to continue. As I mentioned, if you look at the offers for some of these stocks, they are still quite high. Okay. And for the ones like GCB, Enterprise, there are a lot of bids coming through, but the bids are coming through at lower prices. Right. So we expect the sell-off and the decline to continue, at least for this week and the next couple of weeks.
Great. Thank you, Justice. Grateful. Also, Ben Amwa J, Justice Edu, of both research and with First Bank. Gentlemen, thank you so much for joining us this evening. Very grateful. There's a lot to talk about. We have our eyes on your business, especially if you're a mover out there. We celebrate a lot of young entrepreneurs who are doing a good job in this country, and finance also, and administrative, and also especially the private sector, and the impact of government policies on the growth of the economy is what we're going to be focusing on. Next week, remember, our time with the captains, which was supposed to be today, will take place next week, and we once again want to apologize for that. But make a date with us next week. We're definitely, all other things being equal, will bring you time with the captains. Same says ceteris paribus, so let's just leave it at that. But my name is Alfred Okanse. On behalf of the rest of the team, thank you for watching us here on Business Focus. Stay with us as we get into News 360. Good evening.